Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cali. In this episode, I'm going to detail the story of an Oakland father and son duo who crashed out. Oakland has a long history of powerful figures, going back to the 60s with the Black Panther Party and what they did for the community decades ago. But with power struggles in the streets, in later years, it wouldn't be about protecting the community from cops and political figures. With all the progress the black community was making at that time period, in later years, it would later take a drastic step back. The black community in Oakland would be deeply affected by the 80s, with many youths forming crews and taking over the city's drug trade that started booming after the newly formed drug crack began to become popular all throughout America and urban communities. With the expansion of crack, many families were destroyed, some just with single-parent homes and poverty-stricken, and some with many parents becoming addicts, leaving many kids to fend for themselves, creating a generation of young people who had to do whatever to survive. That would make many of the youth in Oakland ghettos and around the world become drug dealers, robbers, and killers. By the 80s, Oakland began to have years reaching over 100 murders, which would be caused by the growing drug trade and turf wars many different crews began to engage in. You had drug kingpins like Mickey Moore and Felix Mitchell, and several others and their crew terrorizing the streets, and many people were under their reign. But with those two later out the picture, the streets would turn even more deadly, with less structure, and more people trying to take over the streets of Oakland. By the 90s and 2000s, Oakland was split up even more, allowing more crews to form, and more young wild dudes with less structure with no rules and no guidance to take over the streets, and that would lead us to the current times. For over the last decade, Oakland many different areas in the city have been connected to either Stubby or Case, which are rival alliances. To my LA people, it would be like the neighborhood car and the gangster car's beef. Stubby and Case are spread out in different areas within Oakland and from many different hoods, from East Oakland, West Oakland, and North Oakland. Many of these areas claim allegiance to either one, and this will be a bloody war between both sides, with both sides losing countless of members and many rappers from both sides being disrespectful in songs. In the midst of this war between both sides, a young man who claimed Stubby and was 19 at the time, named Charles Bowden Jr., was shot on June 25, 2020, and the suspected shooters were supposed to be members of Case. Charles survived, but he wanted revenge. Just 2 days later, on June 27, a person from Case will be shot, and in the same day, Donze Young, also a member of Case, home will be shot up. But Donze didn't even live in Oakland. He lived out the way in a nicer area in Antioch, which is about 35 to 40 minute drive from Oakland. So Donze's location must have been dropped, and people was trying to hunt him. Antioch wasn't known for being as treacherous as Oakland, but it could go down anywhere. And Antioch would experience more crime than normal in recent years, with many people from crime-ridden areas moving to the nicer Antioch and surrounding areas. Now on July 13th, Donze will be targeted at his home once again, but this time, he will be shot outside his home, and he will survive. Donze survived 2 attempts on his life, but the third time, he would strike out. On August 29th, Donze would be chased down in front of his home and shot multiple times. He even got stood over and shot multiple times before he died. Shooting on both sides will follow after this, and a week later, on September 6th, in front of Donze's Antioch home, they will have a memorial event where a lot of people showed up to honor him, but this was even shot up. December 8th, 2020. By this time, Donze had been dead for months. Even though he was dead, his house was still shot up again. It's not clear if other people of his family or people in the house were gang members, but they were still being targeted. I don't know about y'all, but that got me thinking, what'd he do to make them niggas that mad? By 2021, Operation Windstar would develop to bring Case and Stubby members down. Operation Windstar eventually involved 27 agencies from California and Nevada. This investigation later led to the footage of Charles Bowden Jr. and his dad Charles Bowden Sr. being seen fleeing the scene of the crime of Donze's murder on August 29th. The Bowden's house was later raided, where police found guns matching the shootings at Donze's home. Charles Sr. was the driver, and Charles Jr. was the shooter. With Operation Windstar, police arrested 36 adults and 15 juveniles from both gangs combined, and even retrieved over 40 guns and took them off the streets.
More than 50 people arrested, 40 guns confiscated.
Initial homicide led to a long-term investigation into the violence surrounding this gang feud.
Detectives say the warring gangs are responsible for several murders and countless shootings.
Police chiefs from both cities celebrated their successful partnership and said it will make both cities safer.
The reason it was called Operation Windstar because of the minivan that was seen driving away from the scene of the murder that touched off this whole investigation.
When Donzay Young was found shot to death in Antioch last August, it led to the unraveling of a war between rival gangs, Case, the other ENT.
Young was an active Case criminal street gang member, and he was targeted by a rival criminal street gang known as ENT.
Sketches of the shooters were released as part of the larger narrative Antioch Police Chief Tammany Brooks said began to unfold. 6 shootings and 1 homicide in Oakland. The cases unfolded over the last year.
They have been the focus of violence in the city of Oakland for far too many years and will continue to relentlessly follow up on their activity.
Oakland's newly minted police chief acknowledged tensions between the groups and vowed to fix the problem, while at the same time expressing regret.
I owe this city an apology that the group and gang violence that started in Oakland has now found itself in the city of Antioch.
As for Young's murder, police arrested 7 people, among them a father and son. 42-year-old Charles Bolden and his 19-year-old son of the same name. Authorities say the investigation has led to the arrests or identities of 36 adults and 15 juveniles from both gangs who are connected to drug sales, violence, and murder. Contra Costa County District Attorney Diana Beckton says she is prioritizing the arrest and prosecution of those rounded up in the sweep.
My office is committed to doing everything that we can to deter this type of gun violence.
Both Charles Jr. and Charles Sr. are still fighting their cases, but with the evidence against them, they're most likely receiving life. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.